Hello and welcome to Penny's Playtime. This is kind of a surprise episode because I originally was going to wait until Wednesday to release my episode because I was going to do an episode on John Wayne Gacy. Shout out to Jimmy and Jenny for guessing who I was going to cover next. You guys rock. However, when I was doing some of my research today, I found out that today is actually Gacy's birthday. His birthday is St. Patrick's Day. So I thought it would be kind of cool to release some of it on his birthday. Now, Gacy, there's so much info on him that I'm probably going to make this like a 2, maybe 3-part episode. I'm also considering doing maybe 2 weekly episodes. I'm considering doing one on true crime and one on maybe like movie crimes, like, you know, covering all the classics like Freddy, Jason, Michael, etc., etc. So if you have any suggestions for things that I should cover, you know, how many weekly episodes I should do, just leave a comment down below. And I'm always looking for new things to cover. I mean, there are the obvious ones that I can cover, the most famous ones, and then there are some lesser known ones that I may not have even heard about. So if you have any suggestions, just comment down below, and I'm going to apologize ahead of time for if I cough or sniffle. I'm just getting over being sick, and as I said, I wasn't expecting to record again until Wednesday, but I am getting over just being sick, so if I do get a case of the sniffles or the coughs, I'm really sorry. So let's get right into it. John Wayne Gacy, he was born March 17th of 1942 in Chicago, Illinois. He was the second of 3 children to John Stanley Gacy and Marion Elaine Robinson. Now, his grandparents had immigrated from Poland to the U.S. His father was an auto repair machinist and his mother was a homemaker. Gacy was his parents' only son. He got along very well with his 2 sisters. He was really, really close with his mother. However, he had a super rocky relationship with his father, as John was very physically abusive towards his wife and his children. So Gacy was a very unathletic child. He was really overweight, which was one of the many reasons that even though he tried as hard as he possibly could, Gacy never really got approval from his father. In fact, one of Gacy's earliest memories as a child was his father beating him with a belt at the age of 4 for accidentally disarranging car engine pieces that his father had assembled. Another time, Gacy's father had actually hit him across the head with a broomstick so hard that he knocked Gacy unconscious. Now, his father had constantly belittled him and also regularly told him that he wasn't as good as his sisters, calling him stupid and dumb. Now, even after all this abuse, Gacy denied ever hating his father, which, I mean, don't get me wrong, I get loving your parents, and I get, you know, wanting to be close with your parents and wanting their approval, but if I had been in his position, I probably would have hated my father. Now, another childhood memory that Gacy had was from when he was 6 years old. He had stolen a toy truck from a local store. His mother found out and made him return the truck to the store and apologized to the owners. Now, once his mother told his father about the incident, he once again beat Gacy with a belt. This event had actually caused his mother to try and shield Gacy from his father's physical and verbal abuse. However, that only led to Gacy's father calling him a sissy, a mama's boy, and frequently telling him that, quote, he'd probably grow up queer. Now, in 1949, Gacy and another boy were found fondling a young girl. When his father found out, he whipped Gacy with a razor strop as punishment. And for those of you that don't know, a razor strop is that thick leather that is used to sharpen razors or knives. Now, later that year, Gacy himself was actually molested by a family friend. The man was a contractor who would take Gacy for rides in his truck and fondle him. Now, Gacy never told his father in fear that he would blame him. Now, due to a heart condition, Gacy was told to avoid all sports at school. He was an average student, though, with very little friends. He was actually bullied quite often by local children and classmates. A possible contribution to this was that he often helped the school's truancy officer and volunteered to run errands for teachers and neighbors. During 4th grade, Gacy had started to experience blackouts that included seizures. He had been occasionally hospitalized because of these blackouts, and he was also hospitalized in 1957 for a burst appendix. Gacy later stated in interviews that he had spent almost a year hospitalized due to these episodes between the ages of 14 to 18, and he blamed his decline in grades in school on the time that he missed because of those trips. Now, being the father of the year that he was, Gacy's father said that these episodes were faked for attention, and he even went so far as to accuse him of faking the condition as he was laying in a hospital bed. Now, his condition was never conclusively diagnosed, which provoked his father's thought process even further. Now, one of Gacy's high school friends actually spoke about his father, recalling several instances in which he ridiculed or beat Gacy for absolutely no reason. He spoke specifically about an instance in 1957 where Gacy's father started shouting and hitting Gacy completely unprovoked. This friend had said that Gacy never actually fought back. He only put his hands up to defend himself. And I mean, being that young and being abused has to be scary as all hell. And I can only imagine the position that he was put in. Now, when Gacy turned 18 in 1960, he started to get into politics. He worked as a precinct captain for a Democratic Party candidate in his neighborhood. Most parents would be super duper proud of a choice like this. However, it actually only made for more criticism from his father, who often called him a patsy. In later interviews, Gacy stated that the decision to go into politics may have been an attempt to get acceptance from others that he never actually got from his father. Now, that same year, his father bought him a car, keeping the title in his name until Gacy had completely paid off the repayments on the car. Now, it took Gacy several years to pay it off, and during this time, his father continued to be abusive and manipulative, and he would take the keys away if Gacy didn't do as he said. In 1962, Gacy had another set of keys made for this car. Because of this, his father actually took the distributor cap and kept it for 3 days. And Gacy had said that during this time he felt sick and completely drained. Now, when his father gave him the distributor cap back, Gacy left home and drove to Las Vegas, working within the ambulance service for a short time before being transferred to work as an attendant at the Palm Mortuary. He kept this job for 3 months before he decided to return home to Chicago. Now, before he had returned home, he slept in a cot behind the embalming room at the mortuary. And while he was working, he was able to observe morticians embalming dead bodies. One evening when he was alone in the mortuary, he had opened the coffin of a recently deceased teenage boy and started to embrace and caress the corpse. Now, soon after starting this, Gacy felt a sense of shock. Now, this is what a lot of people describe as his first homosexual experience. There may have been things before this, but I mean, nobody really has it documented, so a lot of people consider that to be his first homosexual experience. Now, this incident caused Gacy to call his mother to ask if his father would let him come home. His father said yes, and that same day he drove home to Chicago. Shortly after going home, Gacy enrolled in the Northwestern Business College, even though he hadn't graduated from high school. He had graduated from the college in 1963 and took a management trainee position within the Nunn Bush Shoe Company. In 1964, the company had transferred Gacy to Springfield to work as a salesman, where he was eventually promoted to the manager of his department. In March of '64, he had gotten engaged to a co-worker named Marilyn Myers. Now, this is a pretty cool thing that I learned while researching Gacy. There are actually 2 people in his life that I have seen so far. There may be more, but so far from what I've seen, there are 2 people in his life that have horror movie last names. The first of them being his first wife, Marilyn Myers, and it's actually spelled the same way as Michael Myers and everything. Now, after they had a fairly short engagement of only 9 months, and they got married in September of 64. During his engagement, Gacy had joined the local Jaycees, also known as the United States Junior Chamber, and he worked very, very diligently for them. In April of 64, they appointed him to be key man for the organization, and later that year, Gacy had his second sexual encounter with a man. One of his colleagues in the Jaycees got him drunk and invited him to stay the night on his couch, where he performed oral sex on Gacy. By 1965, Gacy had become the vice president of the Springfield Jaycees, even being named as the third most outstanding Jaycee within Illinois. So in 1966, Gacy's father-in-law had offered him a position managing 3 KFC restaurants that he had purchased in Waterloo, Iowa. Gacy was offered a very lucrative salary of $15,000 a year, which now would be about $115,274, plus a share of his profits earned through the restaurants. Following his completion of a mandatory managerial course, Gacy and his wife moved to Waterloo, Iowa. In Waterloo, Gacy once again joined the local Jaycees, frequently offering extended hours to them on top of the 12 to 14 hours a day that he spent managing the 3 KFCs. A lot of his fellow Jaycees said that he was very ambitious, although somewhat of a braggart. And he was also highly regarded as a worker, working on several fundraising projects. At Jaycee meetings, Gacy would often provide free fried chicken and insisted on being called the Colonel. That same year, Gacy served on the board of directors for the Waterloo Jaycees. In February of 66, Gacy's wife gave birth to their first child, a boy named Michael, and then in March of 67, she had a girl named Christine. Gacy described this time in his life as perfect. In July of 66, so before his daughter was born, Gacy's parents came to visit them. During this visit, his father took him aside and apologized for the abuse that he had put him through, proudly saying, "I was wrong about you, son." Now, that really seems like an underdog moment from a movie where, like, you know, this kid went through all this shit when he was young, and his father was so horrible to him, and now his father realizes that, you know, he was completely wrong about him, and he shouldn't have done that, and it's kind of those, you know, a little bit too little, too late kind of scenarios for me. But anyways, the Waterloo Jaycees weren't as innocent as they seem. They often took part in some pretty scummy activities. They took part in wife swapping, prostitution, pornography, and drug use. So some grade A citizens these guys were. Gacy was actually very heavily involved in these activities. He often cheated on his wife with local prostitutes. He had also opened a club in his basement where he allowed employees from the KFCs that he managed to drink and play pool. Even though he employed male and female teenagers, he only socialized with his male employees. Many were given alcohol before Gacy made sexual advances. Now, if Gacy were to make one of these sexual advances and they turned him down, he'd say that the advances were a joke or a test of morals, kind of like a, haha, I was just kidding, or, you know, I just wanted to see how you'd react. You know, I am your boss. So in August of 67, Gacy had committed his first known sexual assault on a teenage boy. Now, this is where the second horror movie name comes in. This 15-year-old boy was named Donald Voorhees. He was the son of a fellow Jaycee. Now, Gacy had promised to show Voorhees porn, using this as a way to lure him into his house. Now, I can't imagine being a 15-year-old boy and one of my dad's friends coming up to me and being like, "Hey, kid, let's go home and watch some porn," and, you know, being completely okay with it. I mean, different times, I guess, and I guess that porn was a bit more, you know, taboo back then, but I still can't imagine ever going to my dad's friend's house to watch porn. But that's just me. So Gacy got him drunk once they got to his house, and he persuaded Voorhees to perform oral sex on him. Now, over the next few months, several other teenage boys were sexually abused by Gacy in a very similar manner. One of them, Gacy even went so far as to encourage him to have sex with his own wife before blackmailing him into performing oral sex. Gacy also tricked several teenagers into thinking that he was commissioned with conducting homosexual experiments in the interest of scientific research and paid each of these boys up to $50. Now, I get that even homosexuality was a bit taboo back then as well. But that just seems... I mean, I hate to kind of laugh at it because I feel for these victims and what was done was horrible. But the way he went about it is just... it's crazy. So in March of 1968, Voorhees told his father that Gacy had sexually assaulted him. Voorhees Sr. immediately informed police, and Gacy was arrested and charged with oral sodomy and the attempted assault of a 16-year-old boy named Edward Lynch. Gacy strongly denied the charges and demanded to take a polygraph. Now, the request was granted, and the results showed that Gacy was in fact nervous when he denied any wrongdoing in relation to either Voorhees or Lynch. Gacy publicly denied all charges against him and insisted that all allegations against him were completely politically motivated. Voorhees Sr. had opposed Gacy's nomination for president of the Iowa Jaycees, and a lot of Gacy's fellow Jaycees believed Gacy's story and rallied to his support. However, on May 10th, 1968, Gacy was indicted on the sodomy charge. On August 30th of 1968, Gacy convinced his 18-year-old employee, Russell Schroeder, to physically assault Voorhees in an effort to discourage the boy from testifying. Schroeder agreed and lured Voorhees into a secluded spot, sprayed mace in his face, and beat him. Gacy had promised to pay him $300 if he followed through, which he did. Voorhees managed to escape and immediately reported the assault to the police, identifying Schroeder as the attacker. Schroeder was arrested the next day, denying the attacks at first, and then he later admitted to assaulting Voorhees, saying that he did it at Gacy's request. Gacy was again arrested and charged in relation to hiring Schroeder to assault and intimidate Voorhees, and on September 12th, Gacy was ordered to undergo a psych eval at the Psychiatric Hospital of the State University of Iowa. Now, over a period of 17 days, 2 different doctors examined Gacy, and they had come to the conclusion that Gacy had an antisocial personality disorder, and that he was unlikely to benefit from any therapy or medical treatment, and that his behavioral pattern was likely to bring him into repeated conflict with society. They also concluded that he was mentally fit to stand trial. So that is all I got for you tonight on Mr. Gacy. As I said, this is probably going to be a 2 to 3 part episode. I'm sorry that it's so short. As I said, this was really, really, really last notice. I'm not going to be doing the guessing game this time because, like I said, I'm just going to be continuing the Gacy podcast. However, if you have some fun facts about Gacy, especially if they're lesser known, go ahead and comment down below. Let me know. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you guys later.